Welcome everyone to Online with the CMC. Mary Cornell will be presenting in the right order the sequence of series authority records. The slides are already on L2, so if you want to grab those real quick, you can follow along. Mary will answer questions at the end of their presentation, but if you have any questions, you can go ahead and pop those in the chat now, or when Mary is done with the presentation, you will be able to unmute yourself. So hopefully I remembered everything. Take it away, Mary.
Thanks, Pam. Hello, all. Welcome to Online with the CMC. I am your presenter today, Mary Cornell. So our agenda today includes a few items. First, we're going to look at the definition of a series authority record. Then we'll look at different types of series authority records. Next, we'll look at the fields specific to series authority records. And after that, we'll look at some examples of full series authority records. Lastly, we will close with our resources. Of note, on the slide, we have images from a few popular series, which I'm sure you recognize. In order, they are His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman, The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, and Percy Jackson and the Olympians by Rick Riordan. I will be using some of these series authority records as examples in this presentation. So, firstly, I do want to mention a couple of resources off the bat. Through the Program for Cooperative Cataloging, PCC, there is a full training on series, including NACO series authority records. I have linked this in our resources slide. If you walk away from the presentation, we had a moment. If you walk away from the presentation today and still have questions, either reach out to us here at the CMC or take a look at this training. Also, I want to note that our manager, Dr. Pam Thomas, gave a presentation about series in the past for Online with the CMC, and that is included as a resource as well. This is not going to be an exhaustive presentation on series authority records, as that would take more time than we have allotted today, but we will be going over a great deal all the same. So, firstly, a series is, quote, a group of separate resources related to one another by the fact that each resource bears, in addition to its own title proper, a collective title applying to the group as a whole. The individual resources may or may not be numbered, end quote. Also, to give this context in the frame of authority records, quote, a series authority record, SAR, represents a bibliographic resource, a work or expression. Its authorized access point is used in the description of another resource to record the relationship between two bibliographic resources. Expressed in the terms of functional requirements for bibliographic records, or FRBR, the relationship is between two Group 1 entities, end quote. So the Group 1 entities also can include authors, publishers, etc. To make this more transparent, let's use the example of the series His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. So His Dark Materials is a series work or a Group 1 entity. Books in that series are also works, Group 1 entities, that are linked to the series work. For instance, the Golden Compass would be an individual work. With these two bibliographic resources, we therefore need an access point or a series authority record. Also, another way to look at this would be to consider Philip Pullman as the author of his Dark Materials series. And he would want to create a series authority record to make sure these different entities can be searchable, not only as individual access points, so think author title, but also together as a series authority record access point. Lastly, of note, As of 2007, the Library of Congress no longer creates series authority records. There is, however, series authority record reviewers and specialists that the NACO coordinator at the PCC and Library of Congress can refer you to if you ever want assistance with creating or reviewing SARs. So, series authority records are created and function, in other words, for three different reasons: for authoritativeness, identification, and treatment. For authoritativeness, they assist to, quote, to validate the authorized access point of the series, to document the authority data creator's reason for choosing that authorized access point, end quote. This assists in explaining, for example, why the series authority title would be His Dark Materials. For identification, they assist to, quote, confirm that the series represented corresponds to the series sought, to distinguish between two or more series with similar characteristics, to place that series in context and clarify its relationship to other entities, end quote. In the context of our example series, this allows for the series to be properly linked to its author, Philip Pullman. There may also be other series out there with a similar title as well, so this helps distinguish our series. Lastly, for treatment, they assist to, quote, document local decisions regarding analysis, series access, and classification of individual parts of a series. For instance, with His Dark Materials, it helps other catalogers in deciding how to treat the different books in the series numbering of the books, etc. On the slide, I have shared the series authority title access point for our series example, which, as you may expect, is author plus series title. So that equals Pullman, comma, Philip in a subfield A, with his birth year 1946 in a subfield D, and then the series title, His Dark Materials, in a subfield T. All right, so now we're going to talk about the types of series authority records. There are four different types of series authority records. These are monographic series, multi-part monograph series, series-like phrases, and other, which includes serials, integrating resources, etc. Firstly, a monographic series is defined as, quote, one XX field that contains an established heading for a collective title that applies to a group of separate publications and or subseries, each of which also has its own title, end quote. There are many different situations where you run across a monographic series, which, according to the training, makes sense, as at the time of the course creation, 89% of series authority records were made up of monographic series. These are often coded as a 130 in the series access point in a record and include publisher, series, reader series, think the series I can read, scientific series, etc. Secondly, a multi-part monograph series is defined as a resource issued in two or more parts, either simultaneously or successively, which is complete or intended to be completed within a finite number of parts. So, for example, a series of novels by a single author, a series of publications covering the activities of a conference, end quote. Examples of this would be The Lord of the Rings by Tolkien, or a resource about the annual ALA conference. These could be in a 100 or a 130, etc. Thirdly, we have a series-like phrase. A series-like phrase is, quote, a character string, words, letters, combinations of letters and numerals, not considered to be a series, though it may appear to represent one, end quote. These can show up in any larger categories of entities, whether that be publisher, imprints, authors, etc. Most often I have seen these as a part of either publisher or imprint series, in quotes. These can show up on the title page, the back cover, the title page of verso, etc. When in doubt with these, search the authority files. Sometimes these can even be confusing when looking at an authority record, though, too, because there are series like phrases that have been series under AACR2, and there are also series that have become series like phrases after AACR2. Hopefully, any record you encounter with a series-like phrase will have notes either in a 667 field, which is the non-public note field, or will have notes in the 64X fields about tracing of a series. Lastly, we have an other kind of series, which mainly is for series that are serials, integrating resources, etc. For our presentation today, we're going to look at serials for this series type. Serials are, quote, a resource issued in successive parts, usually having numbering that has no predetermined conclusion. So think like a newspaper or a periodical. I will be showing practical examples of these different kinds of series authority records later on in the presentation. Next, we will be looking at series-specific fields in a series authority record. So first of all, there are several different fixed field elements that you consider for a series authority record that aren't specific to a series authority record. For this presentation, we're going to look solely at the elements that pertain to series. For our example for these fixed field elements, we are using the fixed field elements from the series Percy Jackson and the Olympians by Rick Riordan. This can be found at ARN 6712871, or you can do a title search in authorities for the series title. Our first fixed field element is in the position 12, or series type of series fixed field element. This element is the, quote, type of series contained in the 1XX heading field and an established heading record, end quote. This works in correlation with our last slide's information and the types that are available to code. Types of series can be coded as A, monographic series, B, multi-part monograph, C, series-like phrase, N, not applicable, Z, other, or blank, no attempt to code. Looking at our example, Percy Jackson is coded as a B, or multi-part monograph, as this series is a series by a single author that consists of 2 or more parts, books. This seems to be the logical choice. Our second fixed field element is in the position 13, or series numbering, numbered or unnumbered series. This element relays, quote, whether the 1XX field contains an established heading for a numbered or unnumbered series, or whether the series varies between being numbered and unnumbered. This element will correspond with a 64X field we'll talk about later. Numbered or unnumbered series can be coded as A, numbered series, B, unnumbered series, C, numbering varies, or N, not applicable. As shown in our SRE NUM, which is that field for series numbering, Percy Jackson is coded as A for numbered series. Our third fixed field element is in the position 16, or series use, heading use series added entry. This element looks at, quote, whether the 1XX field contains an established heading that conforms to descriptive cataloging rules and therefore is appropriate for use as a series added entry in bibliographic records. This element can be coded as A, appropriate, B, not appropriate, and blank, no attempt to code. Fairly straightforward. As Percy Jackson is set up conforming to the rules of descriptive cataloging, it is coded as A for appropriate. This means you can use this field in an 800 in a bibliographic record. Our last fixed field element I wanted to talk about on its own and is shown in our screenshot as name use. The element relays whether the 1XX field contains an established heading that conforms to descriptive cataloging rules and therefore is appropriate for use as a 1XX main entry or 7XX added entry field in bibliographic records. This element is at position 14, or heading use main or added entry. This can be coded as A, appropriate, B, not appropriate, or blank, no attempt to code. We're still using the fixed field elements from our Percy Jackson Authority record. So we're going to look at the 100 for the record, which you can see on our screen. This is the main heading for the series authority record, and because it is coded as A for appropriate, this means that the established heading as Rick Riordan, subfield A, and Percy Jackson and the Olympians in subfield T is an appropriate heading to use as a 7XX added entry in a bibliographic record. For our first field beyond our fixed field elements, we're going to look at the 010, or the Library of Congress control number. This field is, quote, unique number assigned to a record by the Library of Congress or a cooperative cataloging partner contributing authority records to the Name Authority Cooperative Program, NACO, database, end quote. For any NACO authority record, this is a field that is generated upon the record being added to the authority file. The number will appear in a subfield A, and any canceled or invalid LC control number will appear in a subfield Z. This field has undefined first and second indicators. Our example is from our Percy Jackson SAR. The number begins with an A, with an N, which means this is a number that is a NACO-based LCCN, and finishes with 2005 06 1889. So this breaks down to the year of creation, which was 2005, and then 06 1889 is the serial number for the SAR. For our second field, we are looking at the 022 or ISSN field. You might not run into this field often, but if available, it should be included for monographic series and serials in an SAR. This field is where the, quote, International Standard Serial Number, ISSN, and or any incorrect and canceled ISSNs copied from field 022 of a Mark 21 bibliographic record for a continuing resource, end quote, is noted. The field includes a few subfield options. Subfield A for the ISSN, subfield Y for an incorrect ISSN, subfield Z for a canceled ISSN, and subfield 0, which is the authority record control number or standard number. This field has undefined first and second indicators. I had to search a bit to find a series record with a 022, but the series Studies in African Archaeology found at ARN 248 066633 does. That ISSN is 0284-5040. For our next field, we're looking at the 046 field or special coded dates field. The 046 field is, quote, the date and time are recorded according to representations of dates and times, which is ISO 860, 8601 in the pattern year, month, or year, month, day. So 4 for the year, 2 for the month, and 2 for the day. Unless subfield 2, which is our source of date, specifies another date scheme, dates that are associated with the entity described in the record, end quote. For SARs, they would be considered as a work or an expression. As such, quote, see subfield K beginning or single date created, end quote. Our Percy Jackson SAR does not include a 046, so we're going to utilize the SAR for the Lord of the Rings series by J.R.R. Tolkien. This can be found at ARN 456-5225 or by doing a title search in authorities for Lord of the Rings. Intriguingly, this series record has two sets of special coded dates. Looking at the 670 field that I did for the sources, we found out that this is because the three books in the series, so The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King, were written in stages between 1937 and 1949 and were published between 1954 and 1955. This feels a bit like cataloger's judgment, as I could just see using the second 046 field. However, I think because we know the history behind the writing and publishing of the series, the cataloger who created this wanted to consider the creation, the start and end of writing and editing, as well as when the volumes were published. This is not a required field for an SAR, but can be helpful information to differentiate a popular title. For the rest of our fields, we're going to talk about components available for any series, but mainly focus on examples for monographic and multi-part monograph series. Our next fields are the 100, 130. For both the 100 and 130, per DCMZ1, particular information found in the bibliographic record for your resource should be excluded from your authorized access points. This includes initial articles in any subfield, other titles, parallel titles, the ISSN, though, as we can see, this can be an optional addition if needed, and numerical or chronological designations. You can add information such as qualifiers and letters if the series name includes such things. The 100 field of an SAR is used most often for a series written by a single author or a multi-part monograph series. This field can include the first indicator of 0, forename, 1, surname, or 3, family name, and a subfield A of personal name, and whatever other information is part of the name in subfields B through D, subfield T for title of work, and any other subfields you might need to utilize for an expression if you're creating a series in another language or format. So think like subfield L for language, subfield H for medium, etc. We're going to continue using our Lord of the Rings SAR example for the 100 or multi-part monograph series. As we learn, per the NACO series training, the authorized access point consists of 1, the authorized access point representing that person, and 2, the preferred title for the work. For our example, this breaks down as the authorized name for Tolkien, which is subfield A, Tolkien, comma, JRR, subfield Q, John Ronald Reuel, and ends with a subfield D of Tolkien's birth year, 1892, and his death year, 1973. Then in the subfield T, we have the preferred title for the series, minus the article you notice, Lord of the Rings. Per DCMZ1, there are several considerations for choosing the authorized access point for a monographic series. You have to consider if your resource has more than one form of series title, if it has the series listed in more than one language, and if there are series title pages in more than one language. Per RDA, we would construct this considering the process of a preferred title of work. A 130 can include the second indicator 0 through 9 for numbers of 9 filing characters, and the subfields A for preferred title, and optionally, depending on your monographic series, H for medium, K for form subheading, L for language, etc. For our 130 field example, we are using the SAR for Oxford World's Classics found at ARN 4395575 or by searching the title and authorities. As it appears on my copy of Jane Austen's selected letters, it is Oxford World Classics on the title page and series page. However, there is more than one publisher who utilizes this series title. Hence, this also has a qualifier of Oxford University Press. Next, we're going to look at the 3XX fields. The first field we're going to mention is the 336 field or content type field. Of note, per DCMZ1, quote, field 336 may only be used in NARs and SARs for expressions, end quote. In other words, if your SAR is an expression of the original series work, say the translation of a series into another language, or the work expressed in a different format, so think when a book gets turned into an audiobook, which are expressions, then you would want to use the 336 in your SAR. If your series is a work, a 336 should not be used. Both of the next two fields in general include information in the subfield A. The 377 can include a subfield L for an additional language. You can add a 337 if your series is an expression of the original series work. Here, you could add the three-letter code for the language of an expression. For instance, the Percy Jackson series in Chinese, found at ARN 102-86656, would include a three-letter language code, CHI, for Chinese. Lastly, for the 3XX fields, we're going to mention the 380 field or the form of work field. This field usually includes a subfield A and, if applicable, a subfield 2 to list the source code of the vocabulary used. This field describes the class or genre to which a work belongs. It may be used to differentiate a work from another work with the same title. This isn't a required field, in other words, but it can be helpful for a couple of reasons. Firstly, you can spell out in plain language if your series is a multi-part monograph in a 380. This isn't an LCSH or LCGFT term, so it wouldn't have a source code in the subfield 2. You can also add a 380 for series publications, a subfield 2 code LCSH, which can help along with the fixed field elements to make sure an SAR is apparent as a series. Then additionally, you can also add genre elements if it will be helpful to differentiate a series title from another series of the same name. Our 380s come from the Lord of the Rings SAR. Amazingly, there are multiple Lord of the Rings series titles out there. So the individual who created this SAR decided to include the genres of novels, fantasy fiction, and epic fiction in one 380 field, which are all LCGFTs or genre terms, and end with that source code. They also made the decision to add a term that isn't authorized as either an LCSH or an LCGFT to help differentiate that this series is a trilogy. Now we're going to look at 4XX and 5XX fields that can be in an SAR. As a reminder, these generally are known as C references, so the 4XX, and C also references, so the 5XX. Subjectively, these will only be added to an SAR record if there is another form of the access point that is not authorized, so the 4XX, or if there are additional title authority records associated with the work in the 1XX field. So that would be in the 5XX field. We are going to use the 400 and 500 field from the Lord of the Rings SAR because it has some great examples for both. Firstly, there is a 400C reference for a series title, Magic Ring. Admittance, I feel like a massive failure as an LOTR nerd because this alternate title had never crossed my mind or showed up in my research, but it is the early series title the Tolkien had been considering. The next four fields look at individual works in the series and the prequel work, The Hobbit. These are all 500s with a first indicator of 1. The subfield W includes the code R, which denotes that this is a relationship field, and then in the subfield I, the relationship is spelled out. The first three 500s include an I subfield, container of work, which this includes the three titles and the subfield T of those 500s. So these are all contained within the overall work of Lord of the Rings. And the last 500 includes the relationship in a subfield I of sequel to, and then relays the access point for the title, The Hobbit. So The Lord of the Rings, it was or is a sequel to The Hobbit. The next set of fields are the 6-4X fields. These are known as series treatment fields. These are not RDA fields, but are mark fields. I could not, in actual authority records, find examples of the 640 and 641 initially, but have generated one for each field from the Mark 21 format for authority data website. The 640 field, or the series dates of publications and or sequential designation field, includes a first indicator of 0 formatted style or 1 for unformatted style, and the subfields A, dates of publication and or sequential designation, and Z, source of information. Mark 21 gave the example of 640, first indicator of 1 for unformatted style, and the note that a series was completed in 15 volumes. The 641 field, or the series numbering peculiarities field, includes no indicators and a subfield A for numbering peculiarities note and Z source of information. One of their examples includes a 641 that notes that each issue covers April 1st through March 31st. I'm thinking based on this, we're looking at a series that covers an annual serial. For our last 5-6-4X fields, these are fields that are particularly important when you're considering whether the series in your bibliographic records are traced or untraced series. So think of 491 for a traced series and a 490 for an untraced series. The three fields in specific that are pivotal when making the decision about the question, is this the series in my bibliographic record and can I use it as an authorized heading, are the 642, 643, and 645 fields. Both the 642, when applicable, and 645 are required when creating an SAR. But a 643 can be just as important because it contains place of publication and publisher information. I'll break this down more as we go through each field. For the last 5-6-4X fields, we're going to look at the screenshot provided, which is from the Percy Jackson graphic novel series at ARN 8677374, or by searching the title in authorities. We also have a couple of fields from Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, or TLT as I will call it, the first book in the graphic novel series, found at OCLC number 526057842. First, we have a 642 field, or the series numbering field example. This field relays series numbering example that is to be followed and the sequential designation portion of a series added entry tracing in bibliographic records for individual issues of the series named in the 1XX field of an established heading record for a series. In other words, this is a series numbering you should use in the 800 or 830 of a bibliographic record. This field has undefined indicators and includes subfield A, series number and example, subfield D, volume states to which series number and example applies, and subfield 5, institution copy to which field applies. Our 642 relays that the series numbering should be BK period and then the number of the book, and includes 2 institutions in the subfield 5. If you look at the 490 from TLT, you'll see it includes the numbering book 1, but the same field is coded as BK period 1 in the 800, as this is how the numbering is authorized in the SAR. Second is the 643 field, or series, place, and publisher issuing body field. This field also has undefined indicators and includes subfield A, place, subfield B, publisher or issuing body, and subfield D, volume states to which place and publisher issuing body apply. When deciding if an SAR can be used in your bibliographic record, the consideration is more straightforward if the place of publication and publisher match what is in your bibliographic record's 264 field. However, do make sure that the other 64X fields, and of course your 1XX field, match your bibliographic record as well. If what is in the 643 doesn't match your 264, the SAR as is not authorized to use in your bibliographic record. Our example shows the graphic novel series was published in New York, as noted in the subfield A, and is published by Disney Hyperion Books, as noted in the subfield B. If you look at the 264 from TLT, this matches the publication information in that bibliographic record. Third is the 644 field, or the series analysis practice field. This field has undefined indicators and includes subfield A, series analysis practice, subfield B, exceptions to analysis practice, subfield D, volume dates to which analysis practice applies, and subfield 5, institution copy to which field applies. This field is a, quote, one-character alphabetic code that indicates a specific organization's analysis practice for a series named in the 1XX field of an established heading record for a series, end quote. This can be coded as F, analyzed in full, P, analyzed in part, or N, not analyzed. As shown here, the Percy Jackson series was analyzed in full, which is indicated by F in the subfield A. Fourth is the 645 field, or the series tracing practice field. This includes undefined indicators and the subfields A, series tracing practice, D, volumes dates to which tracing practice applies, and 5, institution copy to which field applies. This field is, quote, a one-character alphabetic code that indicates a specific organization's tracing practice for a series named in the 1XX field of an established heading record for a series. This can be coded as either T, as it's traced as a series added entry, or N, it's not traced as a series added entry. This field is the field you want to look at when you're trying to decide if you should use a 490 or a 491 in a bibliographic record. If the series is coded as T for trace, that means that it is a traced authorized series, which would be coded as a 490 first indicator 1 in your bibliographic record and would have either an 800 or 830 accordingly. If this field is coded as in or an untraced series, and it's also coded as a series in the other fixed field elements, so think A, B, or Z for your type of series, you would instead code it as a 490 in your record. Our 645 example is coded T, so as a series, it is a traced as a series added entry and authorized to use in your bibliographic record as a 491 and an 8XX field. Lastly is the 646 field, or the series classification practice field. I will admit, for me, this is the muddiest field to understand in an SAR. It has three subfield options: A, series classification practice; D, volumes dates to which classification practice applies; and 5, institution copy to which field applies, and undefined indicators. The series classification practice can be coded as S, volumes are classified separately; C, volumes are classified as a collection; and M, volumes are classified with main or other series. For our example, which is a multi-part monograph series, it is coded as S. I have rarely seen a 646 with a C or an M code. I even tried looking up some children's series that I know have some hierarchical series and subseries, and still, it was coded as S. There are a few other 6XX fields that you could or should add to your SAR, but they are not specifically SAR fields. These are the 677, so the non-public note; the 670, so the source field; the 675, source data not found; and the 678, biographical information fields. So I know looking at all those technical details and hearing definitions, subfields, etc., can have the ability to make your eyes glaze over. So I'm going to show you on this slide some images from a physical copy of the Sea of Monsters and where on the item you could find the different fields in an SAR. As with cataloging a book, we're going to start with the title page, which is in the center of our screen. Let's start with the authorized access point, or the 100 field. For this, we see the author's name, Rick Riordan, and the series title, Percy Jackson and the Olympians. The spine photo on our left confirms the series title. These are both part of the 100 field. What might confuse some of you is if we harken back to our 100 field slide, because it is formatted in the SAR as Percy Jackson ampersand for and the Olympians. On the bottom right is an example of the first edition of The Lightning Thief, or the first book in the series. The series, via the series listed on the top left of the corner, top left of the cover, was originally created as Percy Jackson ampersand the Olympians. Both mean and, but it's just different formatting. As we know from our fields, we also have two other fields present in these pictures. In all three photos, we have examples of the series numbering, or the 642 field. Our first edition cover also explains how numbering is set up for the series, which is with the numeral versus the Roman numeral on our edition of the Sea of Monsters. If the Roman numeral is recorded in the 490 field of a bibliographic record, it is not incorrect, as this is the way the series is numbered on our item. However, in the 800 of the same bibliographic record, it is recommended to format the series number as it is shown in the SAR, as the 800 will link to the authorized series. As we know from the 643 definition, if it pertains to multiple volumes in the series, it is permissible to have more than one 643. The publication place of Los Angeles, New York, and the publisher of Disney Hyperion is on our title page and title page verso. This publication information does show up in many later editions and volumes of the series. As such, it fits to add this in the SAR. So, lastly, now that we've talked about the different fields and the different types of series, now we're going to look at some examples of these records in full. So our first example is for the series Love Inspired, which is a monographic series at ARN 45-70543. Given what we've learned, let's look at a few pieces. Firstly, in our series fixed field element, the record is coded as A, which means this is a monographic series. Right below that is the series numbering fixed field element, which is coded as C, meaning numbering for the series varies. And the name use and series use elements both are coded as A. This means that the series not only conforms to descriptive cataloging standards, but also can be utilized as either a 730 or an 830 in the bibliographic record. Let's look at the rest of the record. So we have our authorized access point in the 130. There are two C references in the 430 for other possible titles this could show up as. Then we have the 641 that correlates to the series numbering fixed field element. It lets us know that the volume numbering varies. The 642 to 646 set up the series as a trace series, as you can see from the code T in the 645, where it's published, and the series numbering also show up. Then we have a few 670s as sources that give us information about how the series is established. As we know, okay, and that is it for that one. So our next example is for another monographic series, New Directions paper book, which you've never heard of this series. You are very lucky. It plagued me when I was working at Ingram all the time. This can be found at ARN 1211090 or by searching the title. A couple of pieces of note in this record. For one, in the series numbering fixed field element, it is also coded as C like our last record. Yet, when we look at the 64X fields, there isn't a 641, and we do have a numbering convention set up in the 642. What is interesting about tracing in this series is that the record includes both a 645 with an N and a 645 with a T. We'll talk about more of what this relates to us about tracing of the series on the next slide. This series has a few 430 or C references and a 530C also reference for New Directions paper book original. The record is continued on our next slide. So finishing up this SAR, we have a 667, which is a non-public note field that tells us this series was considered a phrase before AACR2. So going back to our 645s, this note explains why there are two tracing practices. The first 645 pertains to the series before AACR2. As it wasn't a series, it wasn't traced and was coded as N. And the second 645 retains to when the term was changed from a phrase to a series, becoming a trace series, hence the T. We also have a mixture of sources that include relevance for the 430s. So we have Indie paper book listed there. We have New Directions paper book original, and then we have an example of the 642 field. So next, we're going to look at an example of series-like phrase, and this comes from our last example, the 530 in particular from our last example. And this is an example of a series-like phrase for the record New Directions paper book original, found at ARN 4554465. The series code here is C in the fixed field element, which is the code for series-like phrase. And the fixed field elements, this record appears to have information that isn't current. Right now, it has in the name use and series use elements to be coded as A for appropriate. However, per the series-like training, it recommends, quote, generally respect decisions that have already been recorded in SARs, end quote. So while this isn't ideal, the coding of the series-like phrase otherwise would deter users from linking this as an established series in a bibliographic record. The record also doesn't include the 644 through 646 fields that would set this record up as either a traced or untraced SAR. Also, I want to point out that the 530 see also reference in this record. Um, this 530 field lets us know that there is a series that is linked to this one. And then there's also a 677 field relaying instructions on how to handle the series-like phrase. Quote, give as a quoted note, including numbering when presented with the phrase. So now we have another series-like phrase example, and this is for Wiley InterScience publication at ARN 24671. This includes a 380 form of series-like phrase and a 667 field relaying that this is not to be considered as a series and give as a quoted note. Like our last example, this also doesn't include the 644 to 646 fields that would set this up as either a traced or untraced series. So next, we're not going to spend a huge amount of time on this record, as most of our examples going through the fields were for multi-part monograph series. However, I did want to show you all in full what an SAR could look like for that kind of series. This is the multi-part monograph series for Rack and Ruin by Otto Schaefer, who is a local author, which can be found at ARN 171-42037, and hopefully by searching authorities by title. Of note, this does include a 046 for when the series started. This is in the subfield K with 2023 and ends with the source code 2 in the 2 subfield, which is EDTF. This series includes a few 380 fields to differentiate it. It includes the 64X fields, including the 645 with the code of T, setting this up as a trace series, and a couple of sources in the 670s. So our last examples for series types we'll be looking at is our examples for other series. This is an example of a serial series record for Bulletin Associations des Amis d'Alain. This can be found at ARN 1013-5098 or by searching for title. We can see the series is coded as other in the series fixed field element, which is coded as Z. Otherwise, in the fixed field elements, we see the series is coded in ways we would expect for a series. A for series numbering, so that's a numbered series. Names use and series use are also set up as A or coded as A, which is equal for appropriate for name and series use. In general, if not for the series code, we would assume nothing is different about this record, as it does include all of the normative series fields. However, the 644 and 646 are coded differently than we've seen in other records. The 644 is coded as P, which means this series has only been analyzed partly, and the 646 is coded as C, which means the volumes for this series are classified as a collection. Oh, went ahead one, my bad. All right, and so our last example is for another serial. This is for the Bulletin du CFC at ARN 113-8634, or by searching by title. Like our last series, this series is coded as Z or other in the series fixed field element. And in addition to this SAR that we haven't seen in other SARs is an LC classification number in the 050 or Library of Congress classification field. The French language bibliographic record doesn't include this classification, but I did notice that the English language bibliographic record does. This record also includes a couple of 410s or corporate C reference fields. The relationship code used in the 410 field is a specific coded relationship in the subfield W, which breaks down as first position, N, not applicable, so no special relationship between the 130 and the 410. Second position, N, not applicable, so there are not tracing use restrictions between the 130 and the 410. Third position A. So this is a pre-AACR2 form of the heading, i.e. this is an older form of the 410 that it is included as part of the 130. And the last position is A, reference not display. So this choice will suppress a cross-reference from the tracing field, and the reason for suppressing the reference is not found in other code options. This record also includes a different 644 code than we've seen before. The SAR 644 is coded as in or series practice not analyzed beyond the volumes we see behind it in the subfield C, which are volumes numbers 83 to 84. To close out, this record does have a T as a trace heading. So that means this is a trace series. So lastly, we have our resources, which yes, there are a lot of them. And then I want to thank you all for coming. My contact information is there, as well as the contact for NACO if you are so interested. Of note, most of the backgrounds on these presentation slides have been taken from different editions of Lord of the Rings. The edition pictured includes cover illustration by Johan Agerkens that were published in 2020. And on our call today, we have with us Barb Scobie, Dr. Pam Thomas, myself, Eric McKinney, Ryan Rafferty, Katie Roberts, and Andrea Joysta. Any questions?
Hi, Mary. Charlie had posted, I think it's a 0 and maybe a plus sign, but I don't know what that means. I know that you were showing the slide for the 010 LCCN. Oh, okay. Just says that's my bad. All right. That's fine. So I think I made it so that people can unmute themselves, hopefully, if you want to, or you can put your questions in chat.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
I don't remember what slide it was on, but you were talking about the 490 field and Oxford's World Classics.
Do you know which field, which one you're talking about? Let me take this back if it'll let me. Sorry, this is going to be fast for a second.
Don't get dizzy.
There we go. Here we go.
Okay, so why is Oxford University Press in parentheses?
So that is a qualifier because surprisingly, there is more than one Oxford World's Classic series. I was really surprised, but yeah, there are different
Okay.
Oxfords in the world, so I think that's why.
Oh, so they're not all done by Oxford University Press. It's different. Okay. All right. That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? And I'm going to put the link to the evaluation in the chat again. Next month, Eric and I will be presenting this cataloging, press start cataloging games with RDA. That's September 10th at 10. And then our October session will be the third Thursday, since many of us will be at the ILA conference on the second Thursday. And that would be probably a hot mess if we were trying to do it from there. So we're not going to stress ourselves out like that. So please fill out the evaluation form. The link is in the chat, and it's also on the L2 event. And we're always looking for topics for the next fiscal year, so it's never too early to make suggestions. So does anybody else have any questions?
And as I said, if you can't think of anything now, because I know this was a lot of information, feel free to email us at the CMC's email to ask any questions later. happy to answer them post.
And I put that in the chat.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording. And thank you, everybody, for